So to get straight to the point, Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 has a combat system that I promise you can go from frustratingly difficult to really quite easy in just a matter of minutes, assuming those minutes are spent watching the contents of this video. For just the tiniest amount of context, I've played KCD2 for about 200 hours at this point, I've had the game for over a month, and after all that time, I can tell you that most of those hours didn't matter, because KCD2's combat can become very easy, very quickly, as long as you understand a small number of things this game wants from you, but maybe doesn't communicate perfectly, and as long as you correct a handful of small mistakes that I've seen almost everyone making. So let's quickly correct those mistakes and get everyone on the same page, starting out a little basic and moving up from there. Though before we do that, I do need to give a quick thank you to PlayOn, the publisher of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, for sponsoring this video. If you haven't already picked up the game, you can do so using my link in the description, which helps out the channel immensely. Okay, to get started, and before I can really begin to talk about anything else, here is the first and most basic thing you need to know if you're struggling with KCD2's combat, and I don't think it's possible for me to exaggerate here, although this might still sound like an exaggeration. In KCD2, your stamina is 1,000 times more important than your health. Stamina being, of course, the thin yellow bar on your HUD, and the reason I say it's so important is because in KCD2, if you have stamina, and if you're also wearing armor where an enemy hits you, then you either won't take any damage at all if you're wearing something decent, so what should be the case most of the time, or you'll take greatly reduced damage. Now, that's not a hard and fast rule. Certain enemy combos will cut a small amount of damage through even plate armor, and piercing damage from something like a stab with a top tier longsword will get a bit through your armor too. But the point is, stamina is the key to survival, and the moment your stamina is gone, you become fully vulnerable. And even with the very best plate armor in the game, Henry's health will get eviscerated like it's nothing.
That's just great.
The reason I bring this up is because the single biggest mistake I see made in KCD2 is related to players absolutely throwing away their stamina without realizing they're even doing it. And it's something I would argue isn't really the fault of the player, it's the fault of the opening minutes of the game.
It sounds crazy, I know.
So in KCD2's combat tutorial, the opening one with Hans, you'll be taught two moves. The perfect block, which is done by blocking the moment you see a green shield in the center of your screen, and the riposte, which is a counterattack you trigger after a perfect block, when you see the crossed blue swords icon. Now, ripostes are presented to you as a special combat move that can be pulled off with precise timing, so you would think they'd work just as well as they do in the tutorial when fighting for real out in the open world, but here's the truth. Ripostes are not very effective when used on their own, especially early to mid-game. They're not meant to be spammed, they're meant to be used thoughtfully as the start of a combo, or when you see an enemy not defending their head, which is always worth taking a shot at. But when ripostes are simply done over and over again, aka perfect block riposte, which is what I see so many players doing, then they will be blocked most of the time, which means by using several in a row, you're just wasting your stamina, damaging your weapon, and most importantly, you're not using the much better options at your disposal. What are those options, you might say? Well, first off, don't underestimate regular attacks, and especially feinting, aka holding your weapon in one direction before quickly switching to the other and attacking. These have a much higher success rate than spammed ripostes, and most importantly, they give you far more control over which direction you're attacking from. Also, clinches should become your best friend, the earlier the better. These are initiated by simply getting close to an enemy while in melee combat, though you do need to be careful because enemies tend to swing at you while you're moving in, so be prepared to block. But once you begin a clinch with all weapons but polearms, you simply spam the attack button, and as long as you win the clinch, you'll get one, usually multiple, free automatic hits in. And after winning a clinch, enemies are often left off balance for a second or two, leaving you free to bonk them on the head once more. Clinches are something you can start to abuse at an extremely low level because your success with them is based on your strength stat, and one of the very first strength-related perks available to you is called Wrestler, which greatly increases your likelihood of winning clinches. With that perk at only strength level 8, I was winning most clinches I engaged in, and keep in mind, you start in the open world at strength level 7. The other nice thing about clinches is that in KCD2, even if you lose, you're still then often given an opportunity to perform a perfect block into a clinch counterattack, which not only helps to save yourself, but you also still deal a little damage. The clinch counterattacks, or ripostes, they use the same icon as regular ripostes, are in my experience almost always worth using. They land very reliably, and even when they don't, there's not much of a downside unless you're about to run out of stamina, because you're taking just one swing as you're being pushed away from an enemy. Now, that all said, if using and arguably abusing clinches sounds good to you, then I will say a few really easy ways to get your strength stats up include archery contests, those are excellent for strength XP, picking flowers, because one of the very first survival skills you can unlock gives you bonus strength XP for doing so, and finally, this one is the real cheat, just walk around overloaded. The more overloaded you are, the faster you'll gain strength XP, and the quicker you'll be able to dominate every clinch you engage in, which will quickly put you in a position to walk into most combat scenarios feeling very confident. For an added XP tip, there's also the Fox Potion, the formula for which you can purchase from Pavlina, the daughter of Old Bojena from the prologue. And this potion, if you're decent at alchemy and manage to brew the highest quality version of it, increases all XP gain by 50% for 2 entire in-game days per use. So if you want to work up your strength or any combat-related XP quickly, then the Fox Potion is your friend. It's also worth mentioning that if you're low on funds or are just feeling morally flexible, then the Fox Potion recipe and all ingredients for it can simply be stolen from a chest in Bojena's pantry, directly to the left after entering her house.
God almighty! Who would do such a thing?
Now, the top tier Fox Potion does require the alchemy perk Secret of Secrets, which allows for that highest quality potion type to be brewed, but it's a perk you can get to pretty quickly by just messing around with alchemy a bit. And pair the Fox Potion with some of those strength leveling methods I mentioned earlier, or just with combat training in general, and stat-wise, you'll be dominant in no time. Combine those superior stats with more of a focus on clinches and regular attacks as opposed to constant riposting, and you'll be most of the way to fearing nothing in this game. Speaking of combat training though, you'll of course know that around KCD2, there are various small arenas to safely boost your stats in. There's Master Tomcat, who's related to a quest you'll be given by a beggar from the starting village, there's Captain Gnarly, who you'll meet very early on in the main story, and there's also about a dozen more spread across KCD2's 2 separate maps. You can of course level up any weapon and their relevant stats by training with these guys, but the reason I bring them up is because they're the ones who will teach you 95% of the combos in this game. And to wrap this video up, I need to quickly talk about a few more advanced techniques, and more importantly, what type of weapon you specifically should use, depending on what you're wanting out of KCD2. Here's the thing, if you're not that interested in the nuances of combat, and you just want to have a good time and not struggle, then seriously, dive headfirst into the heavy weapon types we've been talking about. Axes, maces, hammers, etc. These weapons are meant for players who just want to run around and have fun clubbing people to death. They only have 3 attack zones as opposed to the 4 swords do, so they're simpler to use, and equally important, most heavy weapons are great against all enemy types. If you pick up a mace or a warhammer, it's not only going to kill unarmored enemies very quickly, a decent one is also going to shred through even full plate armor like it's a tin can, whereas swords can really struggle against even decent armor if you don't know what you're doing. With heavy weapons, you don't even need to worry about combos. They exist if you want to learn them, and generally they're a lot easier than the sword combos because you only have 3 directions to swing from, but if you don't want to think about combos, to say you don't have to is an understatement. Just to level up your strength a bit, drink a Fox Potion if you want to speed up the process, and maybe go train with practice weapons to get your heavy weapon level up a bit as well, because there are some excellent heavy weapon perks that you'd be better off having sooner rather than later. From there though, use perfect blocks to conserve your stamina, then clinch enemies and bonk them on the head with a regular attack. It worked like a charm in KCD1, in fact it was the most used strategy in that game, and little has changed this time around.
But never mind. Let's not sit around reminiscing like a couple of old geezers.
That said, if you are interested in more advanced techniques, well, you can use heavy weapons and master the combos, nothing wrong with that, but swords have more potential there, namely because of the Master Strike. Now, you probably know this, but the Master Strike is a sword-only move that you can unlock once you've managed to beat that first trainer, Tomcat, in a duel. You can Master Strike by simply attacking from the opposite direction of your enemy when you see the perfect block icon. And while it does require a bit of thought and for you to carefully watch your opponent, what's great about the Master Strike is it transcends all enemy stats. It doesn't matter how high an enemy's defense stat is, if you time a Master Strike correctly, it will land every time. This is far and away the top benefit of using a sword, because, as I've mentioned, swords struggle far more than heavy weapons do if you're just swinging away at armor. Regular sword attacks mostly deal slashing damage and very little blunt damage, meaning they're extremely ineffective against armored foes. However, the Master Strike gives you guaranteed hits on every swing if you spend a little time practicing it, clinches are still incredible with swords, and something that goes overlooked is that swords have an extremely effective stab that cuts directly through armor. While many heavy weapons have 0 piercing damage, which is what stabs do, Sword stabs can absolutely skewer enemies, and most importantly, stabs are very quick, so if you're playing thoughtfully, which you should be with a sword, you can often watch an enemy start to attack and then interrupt their attack with a quick stab, dealing significant damage that won't be blocked. Really, the truth is, outside of your regular attacks, all you need to dominate with swords are Master Strikes, clinches, and stabs. Combos are again there if you want them. I use them heavily for fun, but I didn't find them particularly necessary, to put it mildly. The problem with combos is that the lesser enemies that you can easily perform them on, well, you don't really need combos against that type of enemy, because a bonk to the head, Master Strike, or stab will take care of them in seconds, and in a lot of cases that type of enemy would die before you finished pulling off something like a 4-swing combo anyway, just from the regular attacks. On the contrary, the more difficult enemies that maybe you'd like to use combos on are often going to have very high defense stats that will interrupt your combo. That type of enemy is very often not going to let you get 4 or 5 unanswered swings on them early to mid-game. It's just not going to happen reliably until you're significantly leveled up. And while I still persevered in my playthrough and used combos just for my own satisfaction, the truth is, clinches, Master Strikes, stabs, quick hits to the head, those are the attacks that leave very little to chance. And whenever I wanted to get dominant footage where enemies were getting cut down like they were nothing, that's what I focused on, because believe it or not, enemies die quicker when you focus on combat techniques that land every single time. Anyway, to wrap this video up, I want to quickly talk about polearms, the other weapon type, and then I want to give a few small general combat tips. Now, polearms are definitely the black sheep of KCD2 weapons. I leveled them up fully just for fun, and, well, my conclusion is that they're solid and they're nice against groups because of their superior range, but you can't Master Strike, they degrade much faster than any other weapon type, and generally speaking, polearms have worse piercing damage than swords do, while simultaneously having far slower attack animations. So, if you're using them, it should be for the range or just because you really want to use polearms. That said, they do have some pretty effective combos if you're willing to learn them. As far as general tips go though, the first is that when fighting groups of enemies, and this I think is common sense, but be sure to pick off the weaker ones immediately. If you see a heavily armored bandit surrounded by grunts, go for the strong one last, because the guys with unprotected heads will go down in just a couple of hits. Also, keep in mind that in KCD2, enemies don't constantly grab you and turn you around like they did in the first game, so if you're fighting a large group, don't be shy about running away to reposition yourself as often as you want. You can really abuse this to continually single out one foe at a time and make fighting groups very easy. It's also worth pointing out that you really can't go wrong sneaking up on and shooting at least one member of a group to thin the herd before fully engaging, whether that be with a crossbow, my favorite, or a regular bow or gun. That's most of what guns are good for, by the way, preloading and then killing an unsuspecting enemy, preferably the one with the best armor, because guns can one-shot kill even a fully plated knight. Next tip, if you're dealing with animals, wolves or dogs, don't bother using regular attacks against them, at least not before they've attacked you. Just wait for them to attack before perfect blocking and riposting, because riposts against animals land every single time, and usually you can get in a second hit after a riposte, which will finish them off if the first one failed to. Now, my last and most general piece of advice would be, don't overthink this game. Yes, the combat asks significantly more from you than, say, Assassin's Creed, but I promise you don't need to agonize over every little combat mechanic the game introduces. Pick a lane, whether that be bashing skulls in with a high-strength heavy weapon build or master striking enemies all day long with a longsword, then get comfortable with those simple but dominant strategies first, and from there you'll have plenty of room to just have fun doing whatever you want to, and doing it confidently. That said, I think that's all for me today. If you enjoyed this video and if it helped you out at all, I'd greatly appreciate it if you could leave a like, as it really helps get my content out there, and just know that I have a ton of high-quality KCD2 content in the works for you guys. I think by the time this month is over, I'll have posted more videos than in any month before. That said, thank you all so much for watching, thank you to my patrons for their continued support, and that's all. See ya.